SC Media and our sponsors, Savient, Liminal, and CyberArk, are proud to present this month's CISO Stories program. Hosted by yours truly, Jessica Hoffman, this is the show where CISOs share tales from the trenches and unpack leadership lessons learned along the way. Find this month's CISO Stories content at CISOstoriespodcast.com. The Cyber Risk Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit CISOstoriespodcast.com/CRC. Greetings, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of CISO Stories Podcast. We have a special guest today, Eric Belardo. What's up, Eric? How are you?
Hello, Jessica. How are you doing?
Amazing. It's so great to see your lovely face. It's been a few months. I appreciate you always showing up for me. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me here.
Are going to be talking about identity security. Oh my goodness. It's so important. We lock our doors and have our guard dogs and our fence and our ring bells. And that's another story if you trust that. But anyway, that's what we're going to be talking today with recovering CISO Eric, who I am a big fan of, and you always do show up for me. So thank you for everything you do in the community. Raíces.
You got it.
Which is a great organization that promotes bridging the divide for Latinos in cybersecurity. So thank you for everything you do. It's really amazing. So as a recovering CISO, we talked about the importance of having that background in training and identity management in general. And a lot of folks that are coming up in the cyberspace now, that might not be a pathway that they're necessarily focused on. Certainly might not be a pathway that has an abundance of certifications or training other than vendor training, specific training. But who knows what vendor they're going to be working with when they first start out in their cyber career. So I think it's a really interesting point that you brought up about that. So in your experience as a CISO and leading teams that focus on identity access management, what are some of the things that you looked for in those employees when it comes to prior experience, training, in general for that particular position?
Well, one of the challenges that we have in the industry when we're hiring people, so I'm going to take this in two different ways. What is it that a person has to do to get ready to go into identity and access management, or also how we in the industry as directors and vice presidents and CISOs have to look for in the people. So one of the challenges that we have in the industry is as people are coming up and are wanting to learn more of our field, is that we don't present that, call it the trade of identity and access management. And because we don't present that, there's not a lot of training available to the young people that are coming up, and like I call them, the next generation of cyber defenders. So we find ourselves looking at people who have, industry specific or software specific training, with specific vendors in the identity and access management space, but we don't give them the fundamentals, right? What are the fundamentals? Why do we need identity and access management? Why do we need to have strong knowledge in this field, not just in the tools that they're going to do, but the concepts of that, so that it may enrich the person and make our identity and access management more secure.
So what are some core concepts that you would suggest would be part of that training?
Well, because there's so many different technologies that we're applying identity and access management to, you've got cloud identity, you've got, endpoint identity, you've got, API and all the different areas, machine to machine or people to machine. The fundamentals of learning that before we learn the tools, meaning the actual vendor ones, I think that's going to enrich the person. It's going to enrich the team itself, because if you have a person that has only trained on a specific, vendor, and now they need to go to another company or another area, or the company switches to another vendor, they're not going to know how to use another tool. So it's how do we train them in the basics of identity and access management? What is needed? Why do we need it? And how do we apply it? And how do we make sure that we're designing a system instead of trying to fit a tool into our processes? How do we do our processes and then find a tool?
One of our sponsors for this episode is Savient, a leading provider of identity security. Global enterprises rely on Savient's Identity Cloud for unparalleled visibility and control over every human and machine identity, so they can better secure their organization's business processes, enable digital operations, and empower everyone who works for them and with them with the right time, right level access to the digital technologies and tools they need. Please visit CISOstoriesPodcast.com/Savient to learn more and get a free demo. So not jam a square peg into a triangle hole. Gotcha.
Yeah, correct.
Elementary. So you talk about like human versus not human accounts, and the differences there as far as how we're managing them and usage of them. You talked about the fundamentals, like when it comes to like differentiating, with vendors, the differences there. But when I was growing up in the industry, there was a lot of shared accounts, right? Everybody had a shared account, and that was just the way it is. Like, what do you mean I have to have, it doesn't make sense to have more than one account for this. So I think we've shifted a lot from there. But the differences between how we handle service accounts versus admin accounts versus non-privileged accounts. There are some fundamentals across all three that would be the same, but there are some differences. So could you speak a little bit on that? Like how you, when you're working with your teams, like did you have specific people that may be focused on one or the other?
Well, one of the core concepts in identity and access management is the least privilege access, right? So that right there is something. You talk about shared accounts. I still remember when, people used to put their passwords on sticky notes,
Oh,
right?
they still
Underneath
do.
the
They
I
still do.
know, I know. But there were so many passwords and the complexity of the passwords that people didn't learn about that, right? Didn't commit them to memory. And then we tell them, hey, change it every month or change it every 2 weeks or whatever we're doing right now. So those principles, the people principles of identity and access management is what we were talking. But yes, and different teams and different depends on how big your team is, because you may have a small and mid-sized business out there that only has 3 people managing security for everything. So that one person that's assigned to identity and access management has to do everything, right? So it's not just user accounts, it's machine to machine, service accounts. Now they're deploying things to APIs, right? They're doing API access. So how do we do API security there? How do we look at all the different areas of that? But in a team, you might have one person or you might have a team of it. Depends on if it's an enterprise level, right? All of those have different training needs as well. And as hiring professionals, as directors and VPs and leaders, we need to look past the tool of the day, right? And look at how much this person knows about the field, how much they know about that. So that's very important that we know. People, they might have different skill sets. Somebody might be better suited for, like you said, service accounts, machine to machine, API, those types of accounts. That person may have had a background in programming or coding or anything like that helps them do that. Other people are more coming from the help desk oriented stuff, so that those are really good for the user accounts, user management, building that part, which is an integral part. And usually the noisiest one, right? Everybody's forgetting their passwords. Everybody doesn't have access to this, doesn't have access to that. They didn't change their passwords in time. All these good things. So you need to look at the person. You need to look at their background. You need to look at how we're managing these things.
CyberArk is the global leader in identity security. Centered on intelligent privilege controls, CyberArk provides the most comprehensive security offering for any identity, human or machine, across business applications, distributed workforces, hybrid cloud environments, and throughout the DevOps lifecycle. The world's leading organizations trust CyberArk to help secure their most critical assets. Please visit CISOstoriespodcast.com/CyberArk to learn more about them. I love that you just said about using people, leveraging people's strengths. I think it's always a good point to make. So let me ask you this: as a recovering CISO who's managing an IAM team, for whatever it is, maybe integration for a new tool or upgrades a new tool or just whatever that management looks like. If I had on my resume, or you saw a resume that said I'm an expert in zero trust architecture, would that make you, would that constitute somebody who has like some IAM training? Like, how would you even take that?
Okay. First of all, the word that jumped at me when you said that was expert, right? One of the things that I always say to everybody when I talk to them is, even though I have been in the field of cybersecurity for 30 plus years right now, I'm not an expert in anything, right? Because the technology changes so often that, some technology might have been here 3 years ago that I learned 3 years ago, right? Just because I have been in the industry doesn't make me the expert, right? So in the field of zero trust is so big when it comes to different areas. Now we're talking identity and access management within zero trust. Okay. Zero trust is, again, the concept of I don't trust the part that what came before me. So I need to authenticate, I need to verify, validate before I take the data or the information, right? That's coming. So there are multiple paths to zero trust. There's the hardware, the network, the data layers, all these different layers. So when I see somebody saying to me, I'm an expert in zero trust, I'm going to question that. I would say, what in zero trust are you an expert on? What do you know? And knowing that I only know that I know nothing is, let's see what you know. Let's see where you are. Now, your resume could have been very strong in the identity piece, right? The access pieces. How do we do in zero trust? How do we do that chain, from the outside to the inside and through the different layers to authenticate that way? Then I'd ask you those questions.
So thank you for that. So going back, and that's what we want to hear. We want to hear from your recovering CISO. You've had fantastic experience within the industry over, 30 years. You only look like you're 32. So stop playing, Eric.
Thank you.
You stop. A lot's changed in 30 years. Like you said, a lot's changed in like 2 years. Miss a day, miss a lot was what I like to say. So just going back to like focusing on that particular position, because again, when I was growing up, there wasn't really a position that was like, hey, we're hiring for an identity access manager. There wasn't necessarily positions that were specific, let alone training opportunities that are vendor specific as well. So I think it's fascinating, and it's well received and warranted as an auditor. That's always like the first thing we do is we run some scripts against your Active Directory, your domain servers, and see how many dormant accounts you have. When's the last time passwords were changed? What shared accounts with no owners? All those things, because that's essentially where, why have to create a a privileged account when you can just use one that's been dormant, it's already been created, right? So this is valid when it comes to assessing risk, how your access controls are in place, identity management. So, going back to, the education piece. So the two things we talked about is like the problem statement. You said that there's limited education available for those individuals that, maybe want to focus on that. So from a hiring perspective, which is what we're talking about, what would you as a CISO be looking for when you're hiring? And then also from an applicant or prospect perspective, what can they do to get ready? And I'll just also say, and running a nonprofit, that's all about making sure that historically marginalized individuals have the opportunities available to them for cyber. And I think a lot of it is that they don't know. And that's, kind of standard. People don't know what pathways are in cyber, period. They think it's, somebody in a hoodie with some techno music in the background. Yeah, I'm wrecking my DEF CON, but that's not me. But, that's what most people are thinking, right? And here we are, leadership, there's so many different avenues, including this identity management. So, I think it's important that we tell, share the good news that this is a largely needed, appreciated, and integral part of somebody's security program. Period. So, what are some of the things that you've seen out there, or any tips, or maybe something you shared within your organization, that can help folks that are interested in this particular career pathway in cyber? How can folks get ready for that particular opportunity and make sure that their resume is up to snuff and that they're getting the training that they need to be successful?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I tell everybody is here, all of your listeners here for this podcast, are probably senior people. There are CISO stories that we're looking at here. Um, let's give that next generation of cyber defenders, and I use that term very, very often because what we're trying to do right now is bring up the people, bring up the new people that are coming in. So one of the first things is that I always use the term when somebody tells me I want to learn cybersecurity, I always say to them, you just told me you want to learn healthcare. That doesn't sound right, right? In healthcare, you've got doctors and nurses and x-ray techs and EMTs and all these different things, right? In cybersecurity, we have 50, 60 different trades and with 50, 60 different titles for each one, right? So when we're teaching, we're bringing somebody on or where they're saying, I want to learn, let's make sure that we not only say, hey, you can learn how to hack, because we know that's mid-career jobs, right? We're doing a disservice to them. So how do we get them in interested in the other jobs, security operations, network defense, sec DevOps, IAM, all these different other areas that are very much needed. Let me give you a small story. A couple years ago, I was serving as a virtual CISO for a major company, and they said, we want to bring in SailPoint, right? And then we said, let's hire some SailPoint people. It was harder to find the people to bring in to do the SailPoint transition than it was to actually do the technology piece. So we need to try to invest a little more on that area, on this specific area, and make it approachable for people, right? It's not just sitting there and it's not a help desk function, right? It's a lot more than that. It's the architecture, it's knowing where the data is, it's audit, it's a lot of different areas that we have to do here for identity and access management. So when a young person says, what can I do to get started in this field? That's one of the things that we need to tell them, and then learn things, right? Don't just go specific at different things, right? Microsoft has identity management classes. Google has identity management classes. Azure has identity management classes. All these different areas. And when I see that they're doing that they're learning, that they're picking up classes, and me as a hiring manager, I don't look just to see that they've done this in college. I don't see that they just did this in certificates. I want to see them, do YouTube classes. I want them to, watch videos. Put in your resume, right? Put in your resume the different things that you've done to learn. Udemy and all those other educational courses that are there. Put it in your resume so that I can see, look, this person has an interest, an actual interest in this field. And has the knowledge, at least the basic knowledge, to be able to do these jobs.
Would you agree that hiring internally or promoting internally and providing I think it's like we just talked about the differences between the fundamentals and the vendor specific, which I think they're both important. But even with cloud security, right? Folks want to not necessarily in the field already, and they're going out and getting specific AWS, specific Google, specific Salesforce related, Oracle, etc., which isn't a bad thing, but kind of like the CCSP. I've talked to folks and I'm like, well, you might want to start there since you're not hired yet, because a lot of times the company will pay for you to get those certifications, or it'll be at least, at the very least, more applicable because that's what you're going to be doing on your day to day. So, would you, in your experience, have you, or would you suggest that it is worthwhile to look internally to see who's currently on your cyber team, or maybe a help desk with some interest, and then just go ahead and take that individual and elevate them or transition them into a position for IAM, and then that's when you start targeting them with the particular vendor specific trainings, et cetera, that would be needed to execute that particular job function?
Oh yeah, to me, I reward the people that are serving, right? So I always look at promoting from within. I mean, these are people that are here that already know our environment, that already know our issues, that already know what are the challenges that we're facing. And if there is somebody, and I always tell people, the thing about the field of cybersecurity is you start with one job, and then you move to another job, or you learn about another job. You start in security operations, right? And then you move to vulnerability management, then you move to audit, and then you move to GRC, and by the time you're gray like me, you've done 30, 40 different types of jobs, right? Some that don't exist anymore, right? So, but yes, promoting from within helps keep that knowledge that is within the company that can migrate into these different other areas, especially identity and access management, because you already know the network, you already know the data, you already know what it is. So promoting from within is the first part, right? Then the second part is, how do we bring other people in, right? Or backfill that, or bring people. Sometimes it's really good to have shadow programs, right? Where you have cyber people that are, maybe somebody in the SecOps team that is now, shadowing somebody in the IAM team, or somebody that's shadowing somebody in GRC, so that you can then have a secondary or a backup person, or maybe that's what they want to do when they grow up, that kind of stuff. So
I love that, being creative. So, I'm glad you suggested this topic because I'm a big fan of training and just education, period. Because if you don't know, you don't know. If nobody tells you or
correct.
exposes you to it, you don't know. And, I didn't really think about this particular career pathway and maybe the limited prep or training for fresh. But I also think that it's very beneficial to start, like you just said, all your gray hairs are from the 50 million things you've done, which I can count all of them. So that's that's a good indication right there. There's very seasoned, very seasoned. Uh, that makes you a better cyber professional anyway. But I do think that, and I'm not an IAM SME by any means. I have certainly had my share of exposure to that, and I know the importance of it. But yeah, I feel like it's all kind of like building blocks, but certainly that's a really great place to start. So what you just said, I feel like it's just, we got to be creative, think out the box, whether it's shadowing, promoting internally, maybe going out to some of these programs, organizations that are non-traditional, maybe education. And there are some certs I found on online, maybe not the big names that we are normally seeing that are related to identity management. Certainly zero trust. There's tools out there that have some training in zero trust with the fundamentals there, and all the NIST stuff, which is very nice to have such a level of support material out there. But yeah, I really like this topic, and I think there's a lot of money. Let's not forget that there's a lot of money in this for anybody who's not at leadership and who's looking to advance their career. I think there's a lot of money opportunities there, and just doing the right thing.
And there's a fundamental lack of people doing this type of job, doing the IAM job, doing the identity and access management things. Um, it's hard to hire from that. So from the pool, right? So what do we do as CISOs? We end up like poaching from each other, right? You've got a good IAM person in your team. I have a big project. I'm going to go ahead and try to poach. So the pool of qualified candidates. The other part that just makes me go crazy is we are all looking for seniors, right? Senior IAM consultant, senior IAM this, senior that, right? Give somebody a chance. Get a IAM person that has 1 to 3 years in there. Start with them and season them. Okay? Create your own seniors. And that's what happens. If you go to, I almost said Hot Jobs, but that doesn't exist anymore. Monster or anything like that, right? Any of the job boards out there, you see it says senior, 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 right? And it's like, yes, I know we need somebody to lead a project, but promote somebody from within to lead the project and bring in some talent from the outside. That those are strategies that we need to do instead of just thinking we need the best of the best. Let's bring people, let's make sure that we're doing it as a team, and let's make sure that we are successful in these jobs.
And this was not meant to go into like a talent pool discussion necessarily,
Yep.
but I'm kind of glad I went there. We can never really talk too much about it, and I think we all kind of feed off of each other's ideas there. Certainly don't want to poach other companies, disrespectfully, but that's kind of what happens in our industry. I can't tell you how many people I've been working with over the past 10 years that have been
Yeah.
to so many different companies. But it is what it is. So yeah, no, this was great conversation. I think a couple takeaways for the audience is, maybe think out the box a little bit when you're looking to hire for these positions. And any candidates that are listening, you take advantage of some of the tools and resources that are out there, because there might not be any traditional identity and access management related certs. But there certainly are out there.
And let
So
me add let me
education.
add one point. It's not just taking the search and taking the thing. It's experiential learning. Show me that you've set up a home lab. Show me that you've worked and tried this stuff and know and have the hands-on experience. It doesn't need to be traditional internship and working in a thing. Show me the projects that you've done, and that experiential learning is worth 3 times a cert.
I love it. Absolutely agree. Tell everybody where we can find you, Eric Belardo.
All right, Eric Belardo. You can find me on Twitter as eBelardo, and you can also find our organization, Raices Cyber Org, on Twitter at Raices Cyber Org. On LinkedIn, please follow us on LinkedIn. We're aiming for 10,000 this year, so please follow us there, and follow me on LinkedIn as well.
Yes, Raices. Very awesome organization. Always have a great time collaborating with you. Juan's my buddy. Shout out to Juan. We missed him in New York City, B side. So, all right, Eric.
Well,
I know you got a good answer for this. Tell me what 32-year-old Eric right now would tell 18-year-old Eric. What advice would
32
you
year
give
old.
18-year-old Eric?
Thank you for the 32. Um, Learn to learn earlier. Okay. Our One of the things that I would tell myself is get the the love for learning. In this field, we're constantly learning. Things are constantly changing. The technology is changing. The people are changing. The way that we're interacting is changing. The everything is changing. So learn to learn a lot, read a lot, and just keep on learning. And I would have told myself that and not just say, I know this, I don't have to learn anything else. Let's go, right? You know, that hot-headed Latino that I used to be, right? And still am, but that's a different story. But you know, learn to learn that stuff and don't like my father told me, I only know that I know nothing, right? Never be the smartest person in the room.
Good advice from a wise man. A chancleta.
Later. Yeah,
Yes.
or else you're gonna get it.
Thank you so much, Eric, for your time today. This has been great. Wish you much more success in all that you do and look forward to next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again, and let's do this.
Let's do it. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll check you out next time for another episode. Thank you for tuning in for this week's episode of the CISO Stories podcast. We want to say a special thank you to our sponsors, Savient, Liminal, and CyberArk. Please subscribe to the CISO Stories podcast and you will receive a new story each Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you next week for a new episode.